Hey guys, welcome back. In part 3 of creating your own custom APIs, we're going to modify our game project in Unreal Engine to call our new custom API in OWS 2. If you haven't watched part 1 or 2 yet, links will be in the video description. If we wanted to do this really quickly, the easiest method would be to add our API calling code to the OWS plugin, but we don't want to do that. If we did, any future OWS plugin updates would break our custom API calling code. So instead, we'll create a new game instance subsystem in our game project to make our API calls from. We'll copy the C++ API calling code from the OWS plugin to our new subsystem and use it to call our update character strength and agility API. Let's get started. Okay, so what I have here is I have downloaded the OWS starter project for Unreal Engine 5, and I've configured it to connect to OWS 2. And then I came in here and I right-clicked and I said generate Visual Studio project files and opened the Visual Studio project. So that's what we're going to work with here. So let's start by modifying our default game.ini. You can see that it has paths to the different OWS 2 APIs, but we have a new API. So what we need to do is we need to pull over this. So if you remember, we set up this new My Game custom API, and we set it at localhost 44.341 for HTTPS or 44.340 for HTTP. I'm going to leave it to HTTPS. This is technically a public API, so it would run over HTTPS. If you're having any issues with the HTTPS, just change this to HTTP and change the 44.341 to 44.340. Okay, so we now have that available. We're going to pull that in later. But the next thing we need to do is we need to add our subsystem. And so the easiest way to do this is to add the code from inside the editor. So I'm going to start up the editor and then we'll make the change. Okay, so from the tools menu, we say new C++ class. We'll click on all classes and we're going to search for game instance subsystem. And we'll hit next. We want to make sure that it's not putting it in the plugin, that it's putting it in our game project. And we're going to call this My Game Custom API Subsystem. Game Custom API Subsystem. And we're going to create the class. So that's going to add the code to the project for us. It has this thing that does the live coding, I think it's called. Yeah, live coding. I might disable it at some point. It's kind of annoying because I don't know when it will work and when it won't. And so I actually end up just waiting till it finishes, close this down, and then hit reload all. So it might be something I disable in the future or figure out when it works, when it doesn't work. I'm not sure. But we have our code here, and we're going to start adding what we need. So we're going to need to use the HTTP libraries. So I'm going to include those, but that's not enough. That's not enough because the HTTP module is not being included. So what we have to do is we have to come over to our source and we have to go to our build CS. And this is where we can figure out what modules that it is going to include. And so we already have here the JSON and JSON utilities, but it looks like we still need to add HTTP. So I'm going to come here, and this is one of the modules in Unreal Engine. And so we're adding that. So we're going to use this JSON, JSON utilities, and HTTP. So now we've added that. So now this here is not going to get upset with us when we add that module. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want to add some boilerplate code. And this is just built-in code in Unreal Engine. And basically what it does is it allows us to override initialize and deinitialize so that the code gets called when the subsystem is initialized and when it's deinitialized so that we can do some processing. And so we've added this now to the header file. We're going to go add it to the CPP file. And what we're going to do is we're going to add this and this. So we basically just have the same thing here, but we didn't need to copy the word virtual, and we didn't need to copy the word override. Otherwise, it's the rest of that here. And we've added our namespace to it. So this is going to get called when it's initialized. This is going to get called when it's deinitialized. And so what we want to do in this initialization is we want to pull in some values. And this code is going to pull values in from default game.ini. So we've got this OWS API customer key that we're going to need, right? Because we still use that. And then we're also going to need this my game custom API path. So what this code does is it gets a string from the config, script engine settings, general project settings, and this is what it's pulling, and this is the variable it's putting it in. And you can see these are underlined, and that's because we have not defined those values. So what we need to do is we need to go back to our header file, and we're going to create these as private variables. So we've got an F string of OWS API customer key and an F string of my game custom API path. And then what's happening is those values are going to get filled in the initialization, so we'll have those available to use. The next thing that we need to do is we need to get access to the HTTP module. And the way we can do that is that we can create a pointer to this HTTP module in our header. And then over here in our initialize, we can get a reference to it, which we do with this. So this is our reference, and we're getting address of HTTP module is a static method get. So now we have a reference to that we can use to make our HTTP calls. Okay, we need to set up some code here. I'm going to show you where this is at. So in the OWS plugin source code, I've made this nice little function under OWS player controller component. And it's right here. It's called process OWS to post request. And it's a reusable function to do the post request. And so what we're going to do is we're going to copy this code. And we're going to copy it over to here, to our subsystem. First, we're going to need to change the namespace. And then we don't need this module to call. That's letting it choose between the different APIs. We only have one, so we can totally remove that. And then this if section is all about which one to call. We can remove that. We don't need this OWS2 API path to use. We have one. I'm not sure what happened there. We have one right here. My game custom API path. And we're going to replace that here. And then OWS API customer key matches this, so we're good. They're still underlined because we haven't added this to the header. Then we need to come and change the namespace here as well. This is a pointer to the callback, so we need to change that as well. Here we were getting the HTTP, a reference to it each time. We don't need that. We don't need this travel timeout. Delete those. HTTP is getting a reference right there. And so what we need to do next is we need to take this line and we need to put it in our header. And we're going to do that under protected. And we can remove the subsystem or the namespace. And then it needs a semicolon. So we're sending API to call, post parameters, a callback, the response object, and was successful. Okay, there we go. The red all went away. Sometimes it takes a second. IntelliSense isn't always the fastest. And so basically now we can use this reusable function to make any number of post requests. But now we need to actually make that request. So if you remember, our API is called update character strength and agility. So what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to define that. So first thing we want to do is I want this to be blueprint callable. So we're going to add our U function blueprint callable, and we're going to put it in a category character creation because that seems like what it's related to. And then we are going to create our blueprint node definition. So the blueprint node is going to be called update character strength and agility. We're sending an F string of user session GUID, an F string of character name, a float of strength, and a float of agility. Now we need a callback. So the callback is going to be called on update character strength and agility response received. And this is just to use their callback code. You have to follow this format where you have an HTTP request pointer request, an HTTP response pointer response, and a bool for was successful. We're also going to need to create two delegates that we can use to attach responses to. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up top here and we're going to define these two delegates, and these are for update character strength and agility. And so we've got one here called, it's a no parameters, called F notify update character strength and agility delegate. So this is called when it succeeds. And then we've got this delegate with one parameter, error update character strength and agility delegate when it fails, and it sends along an error message. So then to complete that, we need to define those delegates right here. So now we've used this type that we defined up here. And now we're creating an on notify update character strength and agility delegate and an on that should not have the F on air update strength and agility delegate. Okay, so this is starting to look good. So now we need to go and take these functions here. I'm going to copy them. And we're going to need to define them in our CPP. So first we're going to grab our namespace. Double colon, and we'll remove the semicolon at the end and add our braces, and remove this, oops, lost the V, semicolon at the end, add our braces, okay? And so then we're going to use, this is the BP node that gets called, and this is the response that it calls back once it's finished. It's an asynchronous method, so it calls this, and then it waits, and does nothing, and then when it gets done later, it calls this. So let's start building those out. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create a request object. So we've got here our request object that we're using the HTTP reference, remember that up here, to create a request. And after we do that, we want to bind hold on, my bad. Let's delete those lines. One line off. That was this up here. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create a object that we can serialize to JSON to be able to send our user session GUID, character name, strength, and agility. So we need to create this type here called f update character strength and agility JSON post. And so the easiest way for us to do that is to come back over to our header file. And what we want to do is we want to build a uStruct. Okay, so then in this struct, we can create the variables that we want to post. So we can come here and we can add for you properties. Right, here's our user session GUID, our character name, our strength, and our agility. UE5 is getting a little bit more strict on their warnings, and so they also now require that these structures have initial values. Otherwise, you'll get a warning. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here and we're create a constructor, and we're just going to set our initial values to blank, blank, 0, 0, just to get those warnings to go away. So now we have this type, right, that we can fill these 4 values, and we can serialize it to JSON. So we're going to come back over here. Okay, and we've got our type, we've got our variable here. So now we need to start setting values. So user session GUID equals the user session GUID we sent in. And we'll copy this line till we have 4 of them. And then we're going to set the character name, the strength to the strength, and the agility to the agility. I bet this one's actually spelled out character name. Okay. And so now what we want to do is we need to serialize this to a string. So we're going to create a string called post parameters. And then we're going to use this cool built-in function in Unreal Engine called FJSON object converter uStruct to JSON object string. And so what it does is it takes this structure and it converts it to a JSON string. Now you'll see that it's complaining here, and the reason it's complaining is because we need the header file to use this JSON object converter. So we're going to come up top here, and the header file is in runtime JSON utilities public JSON object converter.h. Okay. And then that returns success if it works. So we're going to put it in an if. Okay, so this is if it's a success, this is if it's a failure. So if it's a failure, what we're going to do is we're going to output an error, right? Error serializing update character strength and agility JSON post. But we haven't yet defined a log category. So I want to define this my game custom API log category. So what we need to do is we need to come down to our project Open World Starter H and Open World Starter CPP. And we're going to start with the header file. And there is a macro we can use here called declare log category extern, my custom game API. The default level is log and all. So then we're going to go to our CPP file, and we have to add a matching macro called define log category my custom API. So now we've created that, but it still doesn't see it. So we have to come up top here, and what we have to do is we have to include that open world starter.h. But you'll notice it's not happy it can't find it. And the reason why is that our code is one level below this H file, and so it can't find it. So the convention for that is .. tells it to go up one folder, and now it's happy, and now it's good with our custom log category. Always good to create your own custom log categories for any different modules you have, just so that you can easily single out that log entry when you're trying to look through the logs, and you can change the verbosity of those logs. so that you can get different levels of air logging and don't end up with a log that's just full of junk trying to find just the pieces you're interested in. Okay, so we've got this process OWS to post request here, right? But I actually want to change that. I think that's probably a little confusing. So I'm actually going to change that to be my game custom API post request. Okay? So we know what it's calling, because that is what it's calling here, right? My game custom API path. And then I'm going to go over to my H file, and I'm going to make the exact change here so that they match. And in a second, the IntelliSense should be happy once it catches up. Eventually it will be. Okay, so what I want to do then now is I want to call that. So this was if it's successfully serialized. So now we're going to make the call. So what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, call this API users update character strength and agility, which if you remember, that's the path that we defined for it to use, API/users/update character strength and agility. And then we're sending those post parameters, right? So that's the string of the serialized JSON of this object with those 4 values. And then we're saying, hey, when it gets done on success or error, call this method. Well, that's this method here. Okay. So now we're going to come and we're going to handle this method. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say it sends this success, right? So we need to say if successful, do this, else do this. And so if it's successful, we're going to bind to the on notify update character strength and agility delegate. And if it's not successful, we're going to bind to the on air update character strength and agility delegate, but gotta get rid of that F. There we go. On air update character strength and agility delegate execute if bound, and we send unknown error connecting to my game API server. We're also going to log that as well, just so we know that there was an error. That'll create a red line in our log saying on update character strength and agility response received, error accessing my game custom API server. Okay, so that should handle all of the C++ changes that we needed to make. That's an old thing. Let's see. Let's compile it and see what we missed. Okay, we missed something. Oh. Structs need a closing semicolon. Didn't notice that when I copied it over. Structs also need a generated body. That's because it's a use struct. Just a requirement of the Unreal Header Tool macro system. And we're good. Now we're going to use that C++ code that we added, that blueprint node, to make the call to our API. So the first thing you're going to want to do here is you're going to go to settings and make sure that show plugin content has a checkbox next to it. And that will open up this plugins down here. Now what we're doing here is not something that you would normally want to do. Normally you would want to follow tutorial number 18 in my Let's Make an MMO in UE4 series to be able to create your own character selection, character creation UI. I don't have time to do that in this video, so I'm actually going to just go modify it directly in the plugin. So I'm going to come into, let's see here. So we've got our select character widget, and the select character widget has a create new character. Okay, so if we look at that, the create new character calls I missed it here. Create new character calls show create character widget. Okay. So now we come to our create character widget, right? And if we go to that, we can see that it calls create character. And that's in the OWS player controller. So let's go find that OWS. Let's see, OWS player controller. Okay, that's actually in C++. That's not create character. So what I was thinking is that it's going to be in this OWS login player controller. Let's see what we've got here. Here we go. So what happens here is this create character creates an asynchronous request, but when that finishes, the callback comes back to event notify create character. So once our character is created, we can make a call to update it. So here's the really cool thing about this is that you can say get my game custom API subsystem. You can do that in any blueprint. And then we can just say update character strength and agility. So this is that blueprint made node that we made with C++. We can now call this here. User session GUID is right here in our variables, so we can connect that. Our character name, after it created it, comes back as right here. And we could set some values like 13 and 7. And we could test this out. So let's go and give this a try, but I'm going to want some breakpoints to be able to see what's happening. Just make sure it's all happening good. So I'm going to come into our project and I'm going to drop a breakpoint on update character strength and agility just to make sure that's getting called. And then I'm going to check to see if it was successful. I'm going to drop a breakpoint there. And I'm going to also want to come into OWS. So this is still running in the background from our last video, right? We're still running OWS 2 with Docker Compose. And we've already got, it looks like we've already got a breakpoint right here to see the strength and agility that's sent in. So I'm just going to leave that as is. So that's running in the background. We've got our Swagger here that we tested last time. That's still running. And we're going to come here and let's give it a try. So to do that, going to switch our map to our login map. And then we're going to come and we're going to change our net mode to play standalone. If you haven't already created an account, create one. I think I have an account. Okay, I do. And so now I'm going to create a new character. I'm going to call it like Dart 50. Oh, look at that. It called this. Send our user session GUID, our character name, our strength at 13, our agility at 7. That's looking good. Okay, it made it to, we're now in OWS 2. It made it here. There's strength and agility. They equal 20, so it's going to continue. Made it back here, and it was successful. There we go. So now we're going to go take a look in the database to see the values that it saved. So now what we're going to do is we're going to select the strength and agility from the characters table where character name equals Dart50, which is the one we just created, and we can see that it successfully updated those values. Now we're going to modify the UI so that we can adjust those values, and then we'll be all set. Okay, so we're going to come back to our character creation widget, and we need to make this bigger so that we've got some room to work with. That's probably enough. We're going to go into our, looks like we got a vertical box. Horizontal box. Okay. So we're going to need to create some new horizontal boxes to put our stat values into. So let's go here under panel, and we're going to grab horizontal box. We're going to drag one here, and we're going to drag another one here. Actually, we're going to create one and copy it. That'll save us more time. And so in that horizontal box, we're going to put a static text. And we'll change that to say strength. And we'll change the color to black. And we probably need to give this horizontal box padding on top. And we have 20 pixels. And we probably also need to give it some padding on the side. There we go. And now we're going to add an input box. And so we will, a spin box might be interesting there. Let's try that one. And we're going to take this, and this is going to be txt strength. And we're going to have it aligned okay, that's not doing what I wanted. We'll start with value 10. There we go. This will be easier to work with. And we'll pad that off the left side. I really want it to anchor. I really want it to anchor to the side over here, but anyway, that's something you can play around with. I don't use UMG very much. Okay, it looks about right. And so now we're going to copy that box. And we'll drag that up here. And this is going to be our agility. I guess we'll have to pad this over even further to try to line them up. Something about like that. And I guess this can go back to being a little bit shorter. Okay. And we need to change this one to be txt strength agility. This is where it's going to bind the values to. And I think I've never used those spin things before, but I think they're the kind where you can like do up and down. Let's see if they have an increment. Oh, cool. They have minimum, maximum values. So let's just say you can only go between 5 and 15. Fractional digits. No, I think that'll make up no fractional digit. And let's set the same thing on this one. 15, 5, 15. No fractional digits. It is interesting. Does it work like a slider? I thought it was a spin box, but I noticed there's a slider setting. Delta. The amount by which to change the spin box value as the slider moves. 1. So maybe it is a slider. Well, if that's the case, then we probably should just have it fill. I don't know. We'll see. We'll give it a try. I'm not sure what, I've never used this control. I'm not sure what it'll look like. So let's go and give it a try real quick just to get an idea of what those look like, and then we'll come back and make changes. So we're going to go like we're going to create a new character. Yeah, so, okay, so we need more room. Okay, whatever. So let's go and set fill and have this padding be much less. And fill. Oops. 32. About 133. Okay, let's see how that works. Oh, perfect. All right, so now we're controlling our sliders. Okay, but what we want to do is we want to make sure that as we change one of these sliders, that it changes the other one appropriately, right? Because remember, strength plus agility has to equal 20. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to add some code for when they change. So on this one, on value changed. And we'll come to the designer, and for the other one, and on value changed. Okay. So what we're going to do is when strength changes, and it'll send us the value, we're going to do a subtraction. We're going to do it to here, and we're going to do 20 minus, right? So this is now the 20 minus whatever this value is what we would set agility to. So now we're going to grab this agility, and we say get, and we're going to say set value. And we're going to copy the same thing down here. And we're going to grab text strength because it's the opposite, and set value. And hook this up, and now we'll give it a try. Now remember that this can be cheated. This is just client side. This can be cheated, and that's why we had to have that code over in the API to make sure that even if they cheat the client side, they can't cheat the API. What did I do? I hit something wrong, I think. What? Infinite loop detected. Oh, that is funny. That is funny. Yeah, yeah. I didn't even think about this. We're creating an infinite loop where we're going and setting the value of one, which then sets the value of the other, which sets the value of the other, which sets the value of the other. This is interesting. Okay. So what we got to do is going to come back here and take a look. I noticed they have an event called end slider movement. So it's possible that this one is only going to be triggered by input and not by, so we're going to disconnect these. And what might happen here, because we don't want to create an infinite loop. Hopefully this one is not triggered programmatically. It's only triggered by input. Let's find out. Yeah, I got to watch those infinite loops. Okay, so there we go. Right? So as we change the one, it changes the other. Perfect. That's exactly what we were looking for. So we'll dump this. Come back over here to the agility one on end slider movement. And we'll pull this code down. And we'll delete this. Move those up. Okay, that should handle that. So now what we have to do is we've got these values here, but we need them over in the player controller, the login player controller. We need them here to plug in. Okay, so we're gonna have to send them over. But we really only need to do that when they create the character. So over here, we have a reference to this OWS login player controller. So let's go over here and we're going to create some new variables called character strength. And we'll set that to a float. Oops, not integer. Nope. And then we're going to add a variable character agility. And that's also a float. And we will come and drag these over here. Put that down there. Okay, so now it's going to pull from those. And now we just need to set those. So over here, we can come and say set character strength and set character agility. And we'll put them right here. And we'll pull the values from our strength, get value, and from our agility, get value. I hate graphically arranging blueprint nodes. Okay. And now we go run this. And we create a character. This time we'll do Dart 49. And we'll use some different values here. How about 8 and 12? It's going to be a more agile character. We hit create. You can see it sent 8 and 12. Dart 49. That's calling the OWS 2 API. 8 plus 12 equals 20. It should save it. And so we're back here. It was successful. We continue. We've got our new character. And now we're going to come back to our SQL. We're going to change it to start 49. And we'll hit execute. And there it is, the 8 and the 12 in the new character. So this is how you can use custom APIs to modify your values during character creation and have them validated, right? In the past, in OWS 1, we used this thing called cosmetic custom character data. The word cosmetic was thrown in there just to let you know, hey, this isn't safe. It's just for demo purposes. You can't control this. But now you have full control. You're controlling it on the API side, and there's no way that they can get past having strength plus agility equals 20. So you can do this to save all your different specific character creation values. And we also built this subsystem that we can extend with all of your new API calls to your custom API. That concludes our series on adding custom APIs to OWS 2. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. Until next time, have a good one.